Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video I wanted to go ahead and visit Amethyst Steel Jafar. This is obviously the A Whole New World focus deck where you aim to shift Jafar Striking Illusionist from Amethyst and then sing A Whole New World to gain 7 lore instantly, and maybe even another Whole New World in order to gain 14 lore. But basically it is a combo oriented deck that you aim to close the game out by drawing cards with the Jafar being exerted on your field. In set 5, this deck is in a very interesting spot. I think that while it did get some tools in both Amethyst and Steel, and I'll cover the deck profile in a separate video likely linked in the description, I think that there's enough counterplay options in the meta against a deck like this that a lot of other meta decks are including that just naturally counter Jafar, which doesn't bode well for it. And these decks aren't being constructed to counter Jafar since this isn't a top tier strategy, but it just so happens that things like Pete, Games Referee, naturally counter really hard Jafar. So if you go up against an opposing Steel deck, which you can see we are going up against here, we do have to be very careful of a card like that. Now, our opening mulligan, we opted to keep one A Whole New World, and you can argue that that's a misplay. We should have put back both, but we do get punished for it and draw into yet a third A Whole New World there because we mulliganed one away. And having two in the opening hand is really unfortunate, but not necessarily the end of the world here, especially because my opponent, being on Emerald, is able to snipe one with an Ursula Deceiver, and we end up keeping the second one. So it actually works out for us there. We do have a turn 3 shift Robin Hood, which will basically use up all the cards in our hand. So whatever we draw here is kind of useless because we ink Jafar, Dreadnought, we shift Robin Hood, we sing A Whole New World with it, and we get a fresh 7. And then we have the stronger board. This is the advantage of being on the play. Another deck in Amethyst Steel Jafar that does benefit quite heavily, similar to Amber Ruby Mufasa, for being on the play. So yeah, my opponent is just thinking whether or not it's worth questing here, and I kind of told him, or we were discussing it out, and I said, well, if you quest here and I opt to trade out your Robin Hood, like, I think you're better off just waiting with it, because when I I have wheel, and if I wheel and you draw into a Robin Hood, it gives you a shift target, right? Whereas if you exert your Robin Hood, I'm probably going to aim to take it out so that you can't shift into Champion of Sherwood if you draw into it off of this wheel. So we draw an Amethyst Chromacon here, and like I said, we're going to ink the Dreadnought, and my opponent did not end up questing with the Robin Hood, so I think that was the right choice. We're going to shift Robin Hood, sing A Whole New World. We get rid of Mother Gothel, Strength, Kit Cloud Kicker. There was another card in there I missed, and a Clarabelle, which is good to see. We draw a fresh 7, and this is one of the, I guess, downsides of a deck like Jafar now, is if Steel and Emerald, which are probably the two most played colors now over Amethyst and Ruby, right? You have Amber Steel Song, you have a lot of Emerald decks like Emerald Amethyst, Emerald Amber discard, Emerald Steel adapting into the meta with the Clarabelle build here. There's a lot of ways that both Emerald and Steel, especially when they're combined together, can deal with your board, right? They have obviously all of the pinging damage from Steel, like with the Storm Rage On, Strength of Raging Fire, and these can out things like your small Jafar here, which makes it very hard for you to shift. They also have things like Bruno, which I've talked about many times in like market watches and stuff. This card being an extremely powerful card. I don't know how it's still around $1. It should probably be a $5 card because it is really that powerful for Emerald. And you also have your Welcome now. So basically what I have to do is just hope my opponent doesn't have Grab Your Swords and just go wide enough that they can't target everything I have here and just out everything. So I need to get the Jafar shift off next turn. But the Pete's Games Referee comes down for my opponent on turn 3, which stops me from doing any kind of singing of A Whole New World, which we don't have, but we do have Zeus and we do have Friends on the other side. So a deck like this, which does need its songs, right, specifically for removal as well as the card draw, you can see how I was saying earlier, Pete's Games Referee really does hurt you. Also, a deck like this is very grindy. Match 1 and Match 2 are sped up at 150%, and these games still almost go 25 minutes without that. So they were like, I don't even know, like 40 plus minutes before they were sped up, right? To do game 1 and game 2. So my opponent is on the Think here, and the only thing that's kind of saving us right now is the fact that they're on very low ink, because they probably have a lot of really powerful cards like the Brunos or your Welcomes, Storm, and so on and so forth, but they can't do enough to out the entire board here because the Robin Hood represents a threat. They can't sing Bruno, they can't hardcast Bruno to out the Robin Hood. The Jafars represent a threat next turn to shift, and then potentially draw a bunch of cards and gain a bunch of lore off of it. The thing I do have to worry about is, they are on Zeus territory. So with Pete, they could sing a song and then hardcast Zeus to out the Robin Hood, which I think is what they might do here. but the Jafar is also weak to Zeus, right? This is the downside of it being a 4/5 body, is that it does get outed by Zeus. So you really do need to shift it, because the odds that you play it into a steel matchup, leave it exerted, and it doesn't get answered right away is pretty it's pretty slim, sorry. So we end up drawing an Elsa, the 5th Spirit, for turn here, and this is good. The opponent drops yet another Pete because, you know, they don't really have another play, I guess, here. No shift Robin Hood or anything. I think I was talking to him about it in the match. I'm like, wow, really no shift Robin Hood or anything, huh? But the Pete, my opponent's smart here and knows, like, the Pete is enough to just stall for them, right? Get them that extra turn almost. So it's really unfortunate for us, but we do end up inking the Jafar eventually after we quest with Chernobog and draw first, of course. And then we go 5 for the Elsa, and I think I opted tap down the Robin Hood here to prevent them drawing into a shift line, and then use my Robin Hood to take it out. And the reason why this is good is because if they do want to take out my Robin Hood, they'll have to trade 2 of their existing characters on board for it. Of course, they could just Zeus it and, you know, stop it that way, but they'd have to throw both the Ursula and one of their Petes into my Robin Hood to out it with characters, or use like a Let the Storm Rage on or Strength of a Raging Fire. But my opponent does indeed have the Zeus. They're going to hard cast it there to take out the Robin Hood, and that's okay. They're going to drop yet another Robin Hood. And they had to ink a Clarabelle, so that's 2 Clarabelles gone because we discarded one with the wheel, and then they just inked one there. I don't think they inked another one yet, but we're feeling okay. The opponent's board is a little wide, but no grab your swords coming down to absolutely wipe out our Jafars here, and we do have the shift Jafar next turn, now that my opponent doesn't have another Pete to stall us from singing like Friends or something. Okay, so we're going to start by doing the shift to Jafar, it looks like. Okay, and they quested with the Petes, which makes sense because they know the Elsas can't take them out. I trade into one, and then I trade into the other one. So I take out both their Petes, cleaning up their board, take 3 damage on my Jafar, use a Friends to draw 2 and gain 2 lore. And the Jafar does have evasive, which is kind of nice. Okay, we ink a Champion of Sherwood, so we're setting up for potentially a Tinkerbell next turn. But with Jafar already on 3 damage, like, it just takes a Strength or a Storm in order for them to out it. So they immediately go 4, and they cast a Zeus, which actually isn't the worst, given that my Jafar outed a Pete, and then they had to use a Zeus instead of a Let the Storm Rage on it. They ink a Bruno, love to see that. You know, one of the most powerful spells for Emerald. Honestly, just one of the most powerful spells in the game. Just being able to target anything and bounce it back. Like, you really see the value of a card like Bruno when it can target, like, all these high-level characters and just bounce them back to hand. It's really, really oppressive against when you're facing up against Emerald. So we're able to drop the Tinkerbell, deal 1 damage to everything, use Elsa to take out the Ursula because that's a total of 3 damage. The Robin Hood has 1 on it. They're gonna Zeus again, so I think that's 3 Zeuses, and I think I was keeping count, so I'm like, okay, great. So you probably have no more Zeus, right? We draw into a wheel right just after our Jafar gets outed, unfortunately. But that's okay. And this is another nice addition with this deck, is that, like, Elsa being an evasive card and costing 5, it's just another singer that's likely protected that can sing you a whole new world. So Rabbit comes down, we draw a card, we quest with the Elsa, and then we bounce back Rabbit in order to draw a card. And you can see where a deck like the Jafar could really struggle, especially into the Emerald Steel matchup here, because if they have something like Clarabelle that they're able to shift because now they have the Morph on field, they're going to draw a ton of cards because we are a deck that draws a lot of cards. Thankfully, they did have to ink a couple of their Clarabelles already. They're going to use 3 ink to shift the Beast Tragic Care, and here my opponent kind of made a realization as well that inking the Clarabelle earlier was probably a mistake, because I think they said they had Beast and Clarabelle, and they obviously they drew into the Morph later, but they said they should have inked the Beast and tried to shift the Clarabelle. But like I said, they didn't have the Morph at the time, so playing out Beast for 5 instead of Clarabelle for 7 was much more realistic at the time. So I don't know if it was necessarily a misplay, but in hindsight, obviously, you know, if my opponent knows his deck, if he was on 3 or 4 Morphs, like drawing into a Morph so that you can shift the Clarabelle on 5 instead would have been obviously a little bit better. So here we sing Zeus with the Elsa, and then we're going to go ahead and drop Mim Fox. We out the Beast with the Zeus, and then we play Fox, bouncing back Elsa, replay Elsa to tap down the Robin Hood, and then I say, yeah, I'm going to use the Elsa to rush into the Robin Hood just because it has more toughness, so it can absorb the damage better. So we have a bit of a developed board. We don't have to worry about rush targets, so we just quest with the Chernobog, not banishing it. And now we have total control of the match. The opponent's on 2 cards, 6 ink. We have more draw. We have way more control of the game. So yeah, they've got Mother Gothel. They're not paying anything extra in order to bounce. They're just going to hard cast the strength. And just like that, we were able to kind of take control of the game despite having a bit of a shaky opening hand. But you can kind of see a lot of the vulnerabilities, in my opinion, that the Jafar deck has. We're going to play out the Amethyst Chromacon, which, you know, you could say in this scenario isn't really too smart unless we're going to wheel. So why did I... Oh, no, I inked it. Sorry, I inked it. I didn't play it out. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there's no way you want to give your opponent card draw in this scenario when they're in top deck mode. Oh, so the top deck of Clarabelle, the 3-drop one, which is going to allow them to draw a card, and then they drop a morph off of that draw. So again, just nothing that's going to really threaten us. We draw into, again, just a number of underwhelming characters. We're not going to wheel here either, of course, but we do have a Rabbit cycle with the Snake there. So we're going to quest with Rabbit, bounce it back with the Snake, and then draw a card off of the Rabbit being bounced, and probably just like replay Rabbit and just do our best to play out our entire hand. Because at this point, I'm just like, yeah, you're probably not on Grab Your Swords. Like, there's just better cards to play at this point. So my Jafars and these weaker characters like the Robin Hood and stuff are probably safe. So we're just gonna go ahead and spam the board here. Ink the Chromacon. I don't know if I inked for turn there. Hopefully I didn't yet. But we inked the Chromacon there. Quest for 4. Go to 16. I think that is there. It's either 16 or 10. I can't see on the shrunken screen in my video editor, but my opponent knows the game is over here off of their top deck. They draw Pete, but oh, we drew Jafar off the top. No, and we had the whole new world to end the game with, but yeah, overkill in that scenario.